Alright guys, Streebo from Mutantville.com here with you, and as promised I'm going to begin my series of Fangoria exploration videos. So what better place to start than with my most recent acquisition from eBay. Well, actually this is not my most recent one, but the most recent one I've received. I actually scored a whole new stack coming from eBay. It's probably going to be my last stack for a while because I spent a little bit more money than I'd like to on it. But it's going to come out to about $1.20 per Fangoria issue, so you know that was just a deal I couldn't pass up, especially for a run of early issues. So without further ado, let's try to get through this inside the 10-minute mark, and let's show you which issue that we're going to explore today. Here we go, Fangoria number 10. You can see it right there. The Scanners issue, David Cronenberg's Scanners. At one time, considered my absolute favorite horror director. I don't exactly consider him a horror director anymore because he's working with, you know, more in the dramatic field, or you know, whatever you want to call the films he did in the 90s. Crash and Spider and those films are not exactly horror, and more, you know, I don't know, surreal drama or something to those effects. But anyway, I have not opened this issue. I have no idea what we're going to find inside. Let's check out the print date, 1981, number 10. Editor Bob Martin. This is obviously before the Tony Timpone era, which is okay. I know Timpone gets a lot of flack from fanboys, but I'm not one to pile on in that manner. I appreciate people that have stuck up for the genre over the years, because it wasn't for him setting the table for us, we wouldn't be here today doing what we do as fans in the modern YouTube era. So let's keep that in mind. I've never seen this image before. This is pretty neat. I don't know if this is from a rejected one sheet or a quad or what. It looks pretty good. Let's check it out. It's the mid-1980s, though not known to the general population. A new strain of humanity has emerged, perhaps the next step in human evolution. These are the Scanners, people possessing incredible powers of telepathy. There are 237 scanners scattered around the globe, and no one, anywhere, is safe. That's the basic premise of Scanners. And for writer-director David Cronenberg, the film represents something of a departure. All three of his previous terror films concerned ordinary people cast into a nightmare by some form of physical mutation. The lust-driven parasites of Shivers, rabid sexual vampire, the brood's hate-born brood children. God, just reading over that just reminds us how amazing and innovative and still ahead of its time that Cronenberg's concepts were. It's just so sad he's not revisiting the genre anytime soon. The mutants of Scanners, however, remain quite normal in appearance. It's their powers of mind that have changed. Yep. As Cronenberg puts it, my horror films all have the elements of science fiction, so it would be inevitable that my science fiction films would have elements of horror as well. I don't know at what balance point you'd call a film horror as opposed to science fiction. None of the stuff that I've done, and probably none that I'll ever do, is really hardcore science fiction, which I tend to associate with hardware. You'll often find science fiction writers saying, 20 years ago, I predicted satellites. It doesn't interest me at all. If that becomes the purpose of the fiction, it's not going to last very long, because once there are satellites, it just becomes a historical curiosity. Yeah, good point from Cronenberg. Great image there. I'll show that to you one more time. Here we go. I love this opening video with Ironsides showing how he had drilled the hole in his head. It's just a fantastic image there. Great character from him. It's Dr. Ruth's Home Movies, crazed scanner rebel Revok, Michael Ironsides. And that's, of course, what's his name? The prisoner. I'm drawing a blank for a moment there. Down here we can see this guy pops up in a lot of Cronenberg flicks. I love that image there. He's a psychic Scanners artist that would go on and create you know, these giant surreal artworks that would help him, you know, kind of relieve the pressure of being a scanner. Robert Silverman as a scanner whose loose grip on sanity is aided by art. Yeah, well, that applies to all of us, I think. The fact that Cronenberg is a completely self-taught filmmaker might be one reason why his films are so unique, though he disagrees on some point. I believe that someone of very forceful creativity will be able to break free of whatever influences are restraining him. I've gone through that in terms of my writing, where I was very influenced by other writers. In fact, that comes out in a phrase in Scanners. With all those other voices in your head, how could you hear your own voice? That's true artistically, and it's also true of society in general. It's a good quote from Cronenberg, which brings us to Mother's Day by Charles Kaufman. And I'll go ahead and say now, I've never seen this for some reason, though I have the DVD at home. Mother's Day, an interview with director Charles Kaufman about the first horror movie to honor Mother. Texas Chainsaw Massacre undoubtedly started it all. Dawn of the Dead popularized it. Motel Hell capitalized on it. But Mother's Day takes it to the limit. What is it? It's the funny exploitation film movies. Movies that bring you shocks and yawks. These movies are made with an awareness of the humor and absurdity that are inherent in wretched excess, while keeping a firm hand on the cinematic thrills as well. Alright, so there you go. That's what Mother's Day is about. I'm sure some of you are screaming, you haven't seen Mother's Day? But yeah, I haven't seen Mother's Day. I'll have to check it out sometime. There's a still from the movie, Mother Can Take Care of Herself. I always love these old ads for magazines and do-it-yourself kits and stuff. Fantasy modeling. I create the body cosmic. Oh, there we go. Makeup King Dick Smith. Man that started it all, I guess. Well, Lon Chaney, I guess, started it all. But Dick Smith was the guy that kind of inspired all of our modern makeup artists, you know, by way of guys like Rick Baker and Tom Savini and so on and so forth. We've created a lot of new marvelous innovations for this movie. We've done things on this picture I really thought would be impossible to do. Smith, who changed innocent Linda Blair into the raving demon in The Exorcist, turned Dustin Hoffman into the wizened old little big man, and who choreographed Robert De Niro's body antics in Taxi Driver. Well, you learn something every day. I didn't know about Taxi Driver. What does that mean? He helped him work out or what? I thought De Niro just, actually worked out and got his body all buff and stuff. Maybe Dick Smith built him a new body. Altered States, based on the 1978 novel by playwright Patty Chayefsky. Altered States is the story of scientist Edward Jessup, a man obsessed with the origin of humanity, conducting a number of experiments using mind-bending drugs in conjunction with extended stays in water-filled isolation tanks. Hey, sounds like Joe Rogan. Jessup attempts to find a connecting thread between modern man and his primitive ancestors. He finds the emotional link, but in doing so sets off a mental tripwire that actually alters his physical state of being. During the course of the story, Jessup metamorphoses violently, alternating between a primitive form and a being half human and half cosmic energy. So there you go. Altered States. It's been forever since I've seen that movie, but it had some cool effects and great dialogue by Chayefsky. Fantastic direction by Ken Russell. There we go, there's Dick Smith, Ken Russell there. Another image there. An Anatomy of Terror. Now what's this? What makes terror work, and what will frighten us in 1981? We asked John Carpenter, Avco MC Pictures, Sean Cunningham, Richard Rubenstein, Don Coscarelli, the Jerry Gross Organization, New World Pictures, and lots more people who should know. Well, cool. Most of us have wondered now and then just what it is that gives a good horror film such powerful appeal. It seems a simple question, but it holds within it a profound contradiction. The very idea that anyone would enjoy the sensation of being scared out of their wits remains totally incomprehensible to so many people. Here we go, John Carpenter. My favorite films have always been escapist in nature, he simply states, and horror movies are a great way to escape. Often, the more bizarre the content, the better. Scores of knife murder epics have followed in the wake of Halloween, and Carpenter has some very distinct feelings about the insistence of the bandwagon effect. Yes, it's amazing, isn't it? It's really very flattering in some ways. It's a cycle. The same thing happened in the 50s. The same thing happened in the 60s. It's part of the Hollywood syndrome. Poseidon Adventure came out, and whammo, all of a sudden disaster movies were the thing. Star Wars is another good example of that. But people do like to be scared and pushed to the limit. I think it's also an indication of the times of the world. Well, very true today as it was then. Carpenter's next project is the more sci-fi than fantasy or horror, though we are told that Escape from New York, yay, huzzah, will not be totally lacking in Carpenterian shock. Of more interest to Fangoria's reader is the Dream project for Paramount Pictures. Would that be the thing? While no official announcement has been made, sources at Paramount tell us that plans are afoot for a collaborative film to be directed by John Carpenter, David Cronenberg, and Walter Hill, co-producer and co-writer of Alien. The film is planned as a 3-segment anthology with each director responsible for one 30 to 40 minute segment. Story ideas will be developed by, well, we know now, 20, almost 30 years in the future that this never happened. Story ideas will be developed by all 3 directors, and the script for the film will be written by David Cronenberg. Wow. It was at Carpenter's suggestion that Cronenberg was brought into the project. I think he's an excellent director, says Carpenter of Cronenberg. One of my favorite directors around. He has great personal vision, and he's also capable of being very funny. Well, John Carpenter knows what he's talking about.